So let us look at this year's GS paper 2. First of all, let us look at broad analysis of this year's paper 2. In the last few years, if you look at it, in the GS paper 2, average score is around 80 to 90 marks only. We can understand very easily why it is like this. For the simple reason that polity in prelims is different from polity in mains. Normally, what do people do? They focus a lot more on prelims by mugging up all the facts from Lakshmikant. But when it comes to mains, it is completely a different ball game. The focus is more on analysis with a specific emphasis on current events, and you require in-depth knowledge of the political system apart from the constitution and linking them to current events. This is polity part. If you look at polity governance paper, what is the distribution of marks here? If you look at it, from polity, around 120 marks are given, 120-125 marks. From governance and social issues, around 75 marks. Then from international relations, 50 marks. This is what UPSC's pattern in the last 10 years. From polity, 125 marks, governance and social issues, 75 marks, and IR 50 marks. In IR, you have 2 questions from section A and 2 questions from section B in IR. And these 2 questions are also very simple. One question is about India and its mostly relations neighbors. Another question will be about international organizations. The same thing here also. So the questions are highly predictable. It takes last 10 years. This is what UPSC is asking. But when the questions are so predictable, why is it that people are not getting marks? As I keep on saying, polity from mains is completely different from polity from prelims. For the main examination, Lakshmikant unfortunately is neither necessary nor sufficient. That is what we have to remember. And of course, current events are important. But again, they will not be asking directly from current events. They will be linking it to something else. They will take the current events and link it to the constitution. That is what they will be doing it. So let us look at these questions, and we will understand how and why the question paper can be easy as well as difficult. Let us look at all of them. I think all of you have the question paper. Yes? Okay. Starting with the first question. Examine the need for electoral reforms as suggested by various committees with a particular reference to one nation, one election principle. So, if you read the question very carefully, it says that examine the need for electoral reforms. That means, do we need one nation, one election on the basis of the recommendations of various committees and commissions? Does India need really one nation, one election on the basis of the recommendations? Law Commission long time back has recommended, had asked the government to explore the idea of one nation, one election. Constitutional Review Commission headed by Justice Venkatachalaya had also said that India can have one nation, one election. And recently, the government had set up a specific committee headed by former President Ramnath Kovind, and the terms of reference of the committee are somewhat surprising. The committee was not asked to give its opinion. The committee was asked only to agree to the stand of the government that we need, one nation, one election. Here the crucial thing here is that the government has already said that we want one nation, one election. So give us the recommendations why we should have one nation, one election. That is what the terms of reference. If you look at in Sunday Indian Express article written by former finance minister and home minister Chidambaram, that is what also he has pointed out. Unlike other committees, here the government has already said that we are planning to have one nation, one election. Now you please give us the recommendations why we should have one nation, one election. Now the question here is that should we have one nation, one election or not? So if you look at it, till 1967, India had elections that were conducted simultaneously to state legislative assemblies as well as parliament. Why? Because the political situation. That is what we always say. If you look at the functioning of a political system in India, a constitution becomes a mere statute book, because it is the dynamics of politics that determines the functioning of our constitution. Till 1967, it was Congress party that was ruling the country both at the center as well as in the states. So Article 356 was never misused, and that was the reason why we could have had simultaneous elections to Lok Sabha as well as state legislative assemblies. It was not problematic. But after 1967, for the first time, we have seen opposition parties coming to power in 9 states. That is when the cycle was broken, because the tendency of the central government to dismiss the state governments using Article 356, starting with 1969 Rajasthan. From then onwards, it kept on misusing the Article 356. And in 1971, Parliament, the term of Lok Sabha itself was abridged, when the then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi had decided to go for elections to Lok Sabha 1 year before the expiry of the term of the Parliament. From then onwards, elections were held to either Parliament or the state legislative assemblies almost every year. And if you look at in the last few years, every year at least 5 to 6 state assemblies would be going to elections, and every 5 years Parliament. And between 1989 and 1999, we have seen a lot of political instability at the central level also. Elections were held in 1989, again in 1991, again in 1996, again in 1998, again in 1999. In 10 years time, 5 times elections were held to Lok Sabha. This was the time it was suggested that we need some kind of political stability, and that is the reason why people talked about one nation, one election. And also in Germany they have this system also, constructive vote of no confidence. What does it mean? If opposition parties are moving no confidence, they must show that they have the majority on the floor of the house. Then only they will be allowed to move no confidence, because this was the time we had coalition governments. By taking into all these things into consideration, it was suggested that India should have one nation, one election. But at the end of the day, is it possible, is it feasible, is it practical, and is it beneficial? That is what we have to look at. Our constitutional makers have opted for a federal polity, wherein the elections are held separately for state legislative assemblies and also Parliament. And normally, the underlying principle here is that in case of state legislative assemblies, it is the local issues that will dominate the electoral outcomes, whereas at the national level, it is the national issues that would be dominating the electoral outcomes. National issues in the form of security, defense, in the form of this migration, and these are all basically what we call national issues. Inflation, these are all the things that would be dominating. At the state level, it can be anything. drinking water, sanitation, roads, law and order, all these things are the issues. Now, if elections are held simultaneously, first and foremost, will it not be against the federal polity that our constitutional makers have envisaged? That is one question. Second, as we study, why did we opt for parliamentary democracy? We have opted for parliamentary democracy because there is always this choice between accountability versus stability. At the time of independence itself, we have rejected a presidential form of democracy for the simple reason that it ensures stability, but it does not have accountability. Now, if we have one country, one election, it ensures stability, but will it be ensuring accountability? Opposition parties will not be able to move no confidence motion. And if these elections are held, then a new state assembly comes. The new state assembly will only be for a period of 2 years, whereas in the constitution the term of the assembly is 5 years. Let us assume, because this is not what they have discussed also in the media also, let us assume that Lok Sabha is dissolved after 2 years. What happens? Right now we have again coalition government, right? For 10 years we have enjoyed political stability. Now we have coalition government. Let us assume that after 2 years Lok Sabha is dissolved because opposition parties have moved no confidence and the government had lost power. But opposition parties did not have unity and they could not form the government. Lok Sabha is dissolved. Then what happens? If Lok Sabha is dissolved? All the state assemblies will also go to elections again after 2 years. Right now everyone is only talking about the state legislative assemblies. What about Lok Sabha? As I said, between 1989 and between 1999, elections were held to Lok Sabha 5 times. Right? Does it mean that all the state assemblies also have to go to elections? Or does it mean that the new Prime Minister who will be swearing in will have only 3-year term? Let us assume that after 2 years Lok Sabha is dissolved, elections are held to Lok Sabha, and the new Prime Minister will be there only for 3 years then? Now they are saying that the new Chief Minister will be there only for 3 years. What about the Prime Minister? Will he also be there for 3 years only? Does it not making a mockery of parliamentary democracy? These are all the issues. On the other hand, what are the arguments given for one nation, one election? These frequent elections are causing political instability. These frequent elections are causing political instability, right? And it is also causing huge amount of expenditure on exchequer. Elections are held. It is resulting in policy paralysis because a model code of conduct comes into picture. It is also resulting in political populism because when the elections are held, political parties will have to come out with populistic policies to win elections. These are all arguments that are given. Right? Now, coming to the question here, when you look at all of them, first and foremost, it is causing a huge amount of expenditure on exchequer. When we are talking about a country with the third largest economy in the world, the amount of money we are spending on our elections is minuscule. It is insignificant. So it should not be counted as expenditure because that is the price we can always pay for our democracy. So this argument is completely wrong. And the model code of conduct, then you can always make changes to model code of conduct, wherein the central government can always come out with the policies. And nowadays it is already going on. Central government is requesting the election commission. There were so many instances wherein the central government has requested the election commission to allow central government to come out with policies during the period of model code of conduct also, which election commission has already allowed also. So it is resulting in policy paralysis is also wrong. And political populism. Political populism is what it should be left to the people only. Because if you look at it, in spite of the fact that in states like Telangana and Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka, when the previous government had offered everything free of cost, those political parties were defeated. People are becoming more knowledgeable. When you say that political populism, you are questioning the integrity of the people. That is the reason why, what can be done is that The solution also we have to provide. Parliament and state legislatures, half of them can go to elections once, and after 2.5 years, the rest of the state legislative assemblies can go to elections. That is what happens in America. American presidential elections are held after 2 years. Then the Senate will be held elections after after 4 years in America, and Senate elections will be held after 2 years. So in the same manner, in India also we can have Parliament and half state legislative assemblies going to elections at one go. The rest of the state assemblies can go to elections after 2.5 years. That is what a solution you can write. But the only thing is that how you can put all of them in 150 words. That is where. So you have to be very specific. You can start your answer with till 1967 elections were held simultaneously to Lok Sabha and all state assemblies. Due to changing political circumstances, the cycle was broken. Then come directly to the recommendations of various committees. What are the recommendations? Whether they are right or wrong, and come out with the solution. Each point cannot be more than say 15-20 words. Writing more points with less explanation. Right? Explain and distinguish between Lok Adalats and arbitration tribunals, whether they enter civil as well as criminal cases, whether they can entertain civil or as well as criminal cases. How do you start your answer with here? You start your answer with the number of cases that are pending with our judiciary. At present, 55 million cases are pending with our judiciary, not 1 or 2. 80,000 cases are pending with Supreme Court. 60 lakh cases are pending with High Courts. Remaining cases are pending with lower level courts. Justice delayed is justice denied. And that is the reason why we have come out with what is called alternative dispute resolution mechanisms. In 1987, this Lok Adalat had come into existence. Lok Adalat, if you translate that into English, People's Court. The objective is to provide speedy justice to people. The objective is to reduce the cost of justice. If you are going to High Court, Supreme Courts or in low level courts also, the cost of justice is very, very high. That is what it said. The person who had lost the case, he will cry in the courtroom, and the person who had won the case, he will cry outside the courtroom. That is what they say. That is what we will say. So, the two major weaknesses with our judiciary: huge amount of delay and extremely very high costs. How to overcome them? That is the reason why we have come out with ADRs, alternative dispute resolution mechanisms. We have come out with them. As part of this, Lok Adalats had come into existence. Lok Adalats, what do they deal? Mostly family disputes and other civil cases, mostly civil cases, divorce, succession, inheritance, and all these kind of small things. And mostly they will be resolving the cases then and there itself with the consent of both the parties. And normally the decision given by them are final, but it does not stop the parties from approaching the higher level judiciary also. Normally the decisions given by them are final. Whereas arbitration tribunals, in 1991 India had opted for LPG, liberalization, privatization, globalization. Economic survey has said that one of the important reasons why, please remember, when you are writing answers, it is all about interlinking. The question may be of quality, you must be linking it to economy and governance. That is where you will be getting the marks. And that is the reason why people don't get marks also. Because they will be writing only mostly legal aspects. Economic survey has pointed out that one of the important reasons why India is not attracting FDI is because of third generation of economic reforms we have not implemented, governance reforms. And what are they? Legal reforms. India is a difficult country, extremely, in the perception of foreign investors, that to get the agreements implemented. And as I mentioned, with the number of cases that are pending, it becomes impossible for any foreign investors to get justice. That is the reason why we have again come out with ADRs. One of them is arbitration. So, what is this arbitration, how it is done? Both the parties involved in that particular agreement, in that agreement it is clearly mentioned that in case of any conflict between them, they will find the solution through arbitration only. In case of any, I am entering into an agreement with a foreign investors or foreign any other businessman. When I am signing the agreement with them, in the agreement itself I am clearly mentioning that in case of any conflict, we will not be approaching judiciary, we will be going to arbitration tribunal only. We will try to settle the issue only through arbitration, so that the award given by the tribunal can be final. The objective here again is to ensure speedy and effective justice. The next part of the question is, can they entertain civil as well as criminal cases? They can only look into civil cases. They don't have the power to look into criminal cases. If they look into criminal cases also, I can go on killing people and I will go to arbitration tribunal and I say that let us come to an agreement. So they can only look into only civil cases. And then you talk about it again, the problems. The problem is that infrastructure is a major issue, either for local adalats or arbitration tribunals, because in case of these arbitration tribunals, we need former judges to be acting as the judges in the arbitration tribunals. And then the government is also another problem is that even if the arbitration tribunal gives a judgment, you can approach judiciary through other means also, through special leave petitions also. This is where again the problem is, right? You can end your answer with these problems also. Next, the growth of a cabinet system has practically resulted in the marginalization of the parliamentary democracy. If you remember, this is what we have done in our classes also. We said that if you take the India, it is 140 crore people, and we have a indirect or parliamentary democracy, representative democracy, who will be electing around 800 MPs. We have around 800 MPs, and these 800 MPs would be electing around 80 ministers, council of ministers. These 80 ministers will have around 35 cabinet ministers. From this, we move towards kitchen cabinets, around 4 or 5 senior most ministers. From there, we move towards prime ministerial form of government. This is how a parliamentary democracy can easily be transformed into electoral dictatorship. 140 crore people will be electing 800 MPs, 550 and 250. And from there, we have 80 council of ministers. From direct democracy, we have moved on to indirect democracy. In indirect democracy, we have opted for parliamentary democracy. From parliamentary democracy, we have shifted to council of ministers form of government. From council of ministers form of government, we have moved towards cabinet form of government. From cabinet form of government, we have moved towards kitchen cabinets, and finally prime ministerial form of government. How a parliamentary democracy can be easily transformed into electoral dictatorship? That is what the question here. Oh, and this is the difference between India and Western democracies. In UK, they still have parliamentary democracy, wherein the prime minister is only primus inter pares, first among the equals. Cabinet ministers have all the powers, and parliament can ensure control over the functioning of the council of ministers and prime minister. On the other hand, in India, this is not the case. Right from the days of Jawaharlal Nehru, we have seen this growth of powerful cabinets headed by powerful prime ministers, which have completely marginalized the functioning of our parliamentary democracies. Bills are passed without any discussion. Decisions are taken by the prime minister without even informing the cabinet ministers also. And Parliament has stopped acting as a forum for effective discussion and debate, and also ensure accountability of the cabinet also. Why? Because in India we still do not have what is called a political culture based on cognitions. That is what you have to write here. We don't have a political culture based on cognitions wherein the people will be voting in terms of the performance of political parties. In India, electoral outcomes are decided still by charismatic personalities. The leader of the party had become, the political party had become an extension of the leader of the party. When we say cabinet, we are not talking about central government only. Please remember, we are also talking about state governments. At the state level also the same situation. Charismatic leaders have completely dominated their parliaments, their state legislative assemblies. In some states, average number of days assemblies meeting is only around less than 20 days also. In parliament also it has come down drastically. Why? Because with the prime minister having absolute majority, he could easily dominate the parliament, because there is no inner party democracy. And after writing all these things, you have to come out with the solutions. What are the solutions? Because solutions are very important. First and foremost, we have to move towards a political culture based on cognitions, wherein it should not be the charismatic leadership or religion or caste or reservations or anything else that would determine electoral outcomes. Second, inner party democracy. Political parties should be conducting elections regularly. Third, we must make more changes here. No MP or MLA should be allowed to contest for more than 2 terms. In America, the president cannot be for more than 2 terms. Woodrow Wilson was president of America during the First World War for 3 times. And after that, Franklin Roosevelt during the Second World War also was the president of America for 3 times consecutively. That is when Americans have amended their constitution and they have said that the president cannot be more than for 2 terms. Let us make it here also in India. Let the chief minister or MP or MLA cannot be there for more than 2 terms, so that we can end dynastic politics. We can end forever this kind of charismatic leadership, because institutions are more important than individuals. You write all those solutions here, because everyone will write about how it has been marginalized, but you have to come out with innovative solutions. That is what you have to write here. Next, the duty of a CAG is not merely to ensure the legality of expenditure, but also its propriety. If you remember, we have discussed all these things in our classes so many times. What we have mentioned repeatedly, that the basic difference between the auditing done by private auditors and the government auditor is propriety audit. Because in private audit also you have legal audit, in private audit also you have regulatory audit. But what is the difference here? In private audit also you have performance audit. In fact, in private audit, performance audit is given more importance than anything else. But what is the difference between the government audit and the private audit? Propriety audit. I remember I gave you the example also. Mukesh Ambani can construct his house with 15,000 crores of rupees. When the auditor is evaluating his accounts, he will not ask Mukesh Ambani, why did you spend 50,000 crores of rupees on constructing one house? Because it is his money. He can spend the money the way he like. On the other hand, our CAG can definitely ask the government, why did you spend so much amount of money on Central Vista project? Of course, if CAG have that kind of guts, that's a different thing. Right? Why did the government spend so much amount of money on buying a special aircraft for the president and prime minister, especially during the corona crisis when the government did not have money? That is what is called propriety audit. Please don't write all these things in the examination. Right? You can write something. CAG has questioned the army. This is part of CAG report only, that's the reason why I am quoting. So you can always quote these things. CAG has questioned the army, why did you spend so much amount of money on constructing golf courses? Because it is the taxpayers' money. Taxpayers' money is spent on constructing golf courses. CAG has questioned the government on why did you spend so much amount of money, like in case of in Arvind Kejriwal government on even Supreme Court also has questioned on advertisements. They could have used that money for basic things like repairing the roads. That is what is called propriety audit. As part of propriety audit, CAG will be looking at few things. What are they? First one is whether the money spent on the purpose, whether that purpose for which money is spent is necessary or not. Second, even if it is necessary, whether that much amount of money should be spent or not. Could there have been any economies as far as expenditure is concerned? Because at the end of the day, it is taxpayers' money. Normally, unfortunately, CAGs are not doing those things nowadays because of the politicization of the office of CAG. So that is what you have to write for this question. Right. Come to the next question. Analyze the role of local bodies in providing good governance at local level and bring out pros and cons of merging the local bodies with urban local bodies. Analyze the role of local bodies in providing good governance at the local level. This is what we keep on saying all the time. Central government, as a former chief minister has pointed out, the central government is a myth. It is a myth. Why? If I am a person on the street, can I see central government? Maintenance of roads, drainage, drinking water, street lights, and law and order, land, forest, agriculture. Who is responsible? My hospitals, my schools. Who is responsible? Central government not. Nowadays state government also not. Who is responsible? Local self-governments. So, good governance is possible only with effective local self-governments. Why? Because service delivery takes place only at the lowest level. In India, policies are always good, but the problem is always with implementation of policies. And for a long period of time, bureaucracy was given the responsibility of implementation of policies. Please remember, all these things you have to write in your answers. The question looks very simple. I keep on saying, what is the reason why 80 to 90 marks? Conceptual clarity and interlinkages. For a long period of time, it was only bureaucracy that was given the responsibility of implementing policies at the ground level, providing basic services to the people at the ground level, ensuring service delivery mechanisms. And unfortunately, bureaucracy is not accountable to the people. That is the reason why we had come out with this idea of local self-governments. Why? One, to ensure participation of citizens. Second, to fix accountability of bureaucracy in service delivery mechanisms. And that is what you have to write as part of your answer. Why local self-governments are necessary for good governance, for these two reasons. Please remember, these kind of things will not be there in Lakshmikant. You will never be looking at these things in Lakshmikant. Lakshmikant will give you faithfully all the features of 73rd and 74th amendments. Right? And is it necessary for this question? And if you are writing all the features of 73rd, 74th amendments, you will get marks on humanitarian basis, 1 or 2 marks, because you have spent a lot of your pen, ink, time, energy, resources and everything. Right? That is the reason why, as I keep on saying, you need interlinkages. Constitution, polity, governance, social issues, all of them must be interlinked. Then the second part of the question says that bring out the pros and cons of merging rural local bodies with urban local bodies. Already it is there. Already it is there with district planning committees. If you remember, what are these district planning committees? District planning committees consist of members from both rural and local bodies. 80% of the members of DPCs are elected members from both rural and urban local bodies. 80% of the members. And they will be formulating the plans for the entire district consisting of both rural and urban areas. They are already formulating the plans. As I said, DPCs. It has both members from rural and urban local bodies. In rural, it will be starting with Gram Sabha, then Mandal Panchayats, then Jilla Parishad. And in urban, depending on the area, it can be Nagar Panchayats or Nagar municipalities or municipal corporations. They are part of district planning committees. Now the question says is that should we merge all of them? Obviously, it is not. Obviously, this is not possible because the problems of rural areas are different from problems of urban areas. Problems of rural areas are different from problems of urban areas. And that is the reason why we have these DPCs that will take into consideration both rural as well as urban bodies and formulating an integrated plan for the entire district, including both rural and urban areas. And more importantly, what in most of the cities nowadays is going on is that they are expanding the boundaries of the city. For example, take the case of Delhi. National capital territory of Delhi, which includes the nearby surrounding areas also. The local nearby surrounding villages are also part of it. Already it is being done. You have to give all these examples. You take the case of Bombay, Brahi Mumbai Municipal Corporation. You take the case of Bangalore, again Urban Development Authority Bangalore, which includes the areas which are close to the city. They were also included to ensure holistic development in terms of infrastructure and everything else also. Already it is being done. Already it is being done. So that is the reason why you say that at this point of time, more than merging urban local bodies and rural local bodies, what you must do? You must ensure effective functioning of DPCs and you must give more powers to local bodies. They do not have any real powers. They don't have any real powers. For example, a city is under floods. Who should be taking responsibility for it? The mayor. You do not see the mayor there. And who will be there? Chief Minister. Why should Chief Minister be going to the flooded areas? Who should be made responsible? Mayor. In America, if a city is in floods, will the president go there? Mayor only. Give more powers. That is what the solution you have to write. That is what solution you have to write. Let these mayors be elected directly and let these mayors be accountable to the people. That is what we study all the time in administration, autonomy and accountability. That is what you have to write for this question. Again, please remember, the question looks very simple here. And that is the reason why people don't get marks also. Next, public charitable trusts have the potential to make India's development more inclusive as they related to certain vital public issues. So, these public charitable trusts have been there for a long period of time. They are a part of what is called third sector. For example, the first one is the state, second one is markets. Third sector is what is called voluntary sector. Civil society organizations. In those civil society organizations, we have so many of them. We have NGOs, we have pressure groups, we have charitable organizations, we have this voluntary associations, professional organizations, then caste-based organizations, religious institutions. They are all part of the third sector. One of them is public charitable trusts. What are the charitable trusts? They are registered under income tax section 80 of income tax, wherein the amount of money they have spent need not be taxed. And if you are donating money to the charitable trust also, the money you are donating will be exempted from your taxation purposes also. The objective is to promote these kind of activities among the people. And you see, where do these charitable trusts work? They work in the field of education, in the field of health, in the field of food security, providing free food. They work in the field of sanitation, and they work in the field of women empowerment. They work in the field of tribal welfare. They work in the field of welfare of the employees, especially the workers. So these public charitable trusts will be working in all these fields. And it says that India's development more inclusive as they relate to certain vital public issues. As the question, again you have to understand the question critically here. India's development more inclusive as they relate to certain vital public issues. Why does it make India's development more inclusive? That is where your answer has to be focusing on. Why? Because after 1991, when India had opted for LPG, the country has witnessed widening inequalities in the distribution of income and wealth. Widening distribution. Rich people are becoming richer and poor people poorer. So, how can we make poor people rich? We can make poor people rich by ensuring that they have access to quality food, quality health, quality education. These three things. And that is what public charitable trust will be doing. That is what you have to write. Your answer has to be very specific for these generic questions. How these public charitable trusts are helping in inclusive growth. As I said, three things are important to remove poverty: education, health, and of course food. And this is where they are working. There are so many educational trusts which are providing free education to children, and so many of them are there which are providing skill based training, again free of cost, and so many of them are working in the field of health, especially female. Female health is one of the things that are routinely neglected by our policy makers also. That is where the charitable trusts are working. And if you have any examples, it is better you can give those examples also. After writing these things, then you talk about the challenges and you talk about the solutions also. What are the challenges faced by them? Too much of regulatory governance. That is what we say, regulatory cholesterol. There are too many restrictions on their functioning in terms of receiving funds, spending funds also. And on their part, there is diversion of funds also. They are not spending all their monies. And that is the reason why the government of India had also made changes to FCRA to ensure that they will be not diverting the funds and spending the money on the purpose for which it has been given. In 2020, the government of India has made changes to FCRA 1976, Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, to make sure that the charitable trusts are not misusing their funds also. They might be demanding money for education or health, and they are using that money for conversion activities. So you have to mention all these things also as part of your answer. As you can see here, the question looks very simple, but so much of information, because each and every word becomes important. They are trying to make India's development more inclusive. Why they are trying to make India's development more inclusive? Because it is not inclusive. Rich people are becoming richer and poor people poorer. Right? Next, poverty and malnutrition creates a vicious cycle, adversely affecting human capital formation. What steps can be taken to break this cycle? What steps can be taken to break this cycle? Poverty and malnutrition create a vicious cycle, adversely affecting human capital formation. Right? So, right now, what are the steps that are taken, and why those steps are not efficient, and what should be done? That is what the answer to the question should be. That is what the answer to the question should be. Now, what is the vicious cycle that we are talking about here? Since the people are poor, How the government is trying to tackle this poverty and malnutrition? By giving them subsidies. By giving them subsidies. Since people are poor, government gives them subsidies. And since the government is giving subsidies, they will poor. They will always be poor. They will always be poor. Since the government is giving subsidies, they will always be poor. Why? These subsidies are part of poverty alleviation, but not poverty removal. They are part of poverty alleviation, but not poverty removal. And that is the reason why after 75 years of independence also we are spending every year almost 4 lakh crores of rupees on food subsidies. After 75 years of independence, when you say that more than 80 crore people in our country require food subsidies, it clearly shows that there is something seriously wrong with our policies. 80 crore people in our country still needed the help of the government to survive through food subsidies. That means there is something seriously wrong. There is something seriously wrong. And at least half of our population needed Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana benefits, health benefits. There is something seriously wrong. Right? Why? Why? Because political parties are looking for only short-term solutions in the form of subsidies. Then what is the long-term solution? How to overcome it? Let us try to understand this. How and why it is happening, let us try to understand it. So, the government is saying that since people are poor, they are giving subsidies. When the government is giving subsidies, what happens? Revenue expenditure will go up. Revenue expenditure of the government will go up. When revenue expenditure of the government is going up, what happens? There will be less amount of money for with the government to be spent on capital expenditure. Capital expenditure will be coming down. Capital expenditure will be coming down. When the government is spending less on capital expenditure, it means infrastructure spending, especially physical infrastructure, will be coming down. And social infrastructure, that is education, health and food expenditure will also be coming down. Social infrastructure, education and health will be coming down. Social it will be coming down on education and health. When infrastructure spending by the government is coming down, private investment also will come down. Private investment also will come down. Private investment also will come down. Why? Because private sector will invest only when you have both the physical infrastructure along with skilled personnel. Private investment will be coming down. When the private investment will be coming down, unemployment will be going up. It is the private sector that will be providing employment to the people. Unemployment will be going up. Right? When unemployment is going up, people will remain poor. Poverty levels will go up. When poverty levels go up, subsidies will be going up. When subsidies are going up, that is where the vicious cycle that we talk about. That is where the vicious cycle we are talking about. Poor people are going up, because of which subsidies are going up, because of which revenue expenditure is going up, because of this capital expenditure is coming down, because of this infrastructure spending is coming down, because of this the amount of money spent by the government on education and health also is coming down, because of this private investment will be coming down, unemployment will be going up. This is the problem, and that is what you have to write for this question. Then what is the solution? As a future civil servant, you should not only be talking about the problems but also provide the solutions. What is the solution you are providing for this? what is the solution that we have to provide here? What is the solution? What should be done? First and foremost, there should be limit on subsidies provided by the governments. A limit. The amount of money spent by the government on subsidies should be limit. Second, divide subsidies into merit and non-merit subsidies, and mercilessly remove all those non-merit subsidies. Remove all those non-merit subsidies. Third, and remove all those unwanted beneficiaries, undeserving beneficiaries from the subsidies. When the government says that around 11.8% of our people are living below poverty line, out of 140 crores, 11% means maximum 15-16 crores, maximum 16 crores. Then why are you providing subsidies, food subsidies to 80 crore people? Who are the remaining 65 crore people? Are you providing these food subsidies to people from Pakistan, Bangladesh, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Burma also? Why are you providing? Remove. That is what Niti Aayog also has said. If you remove all those undeserving beneficiaries, you can reduce your food subsidy bill by at least 70%. Right? And then make changes to FRBM legislation. Make changes to FRBM legislation. Since neither the central nor state governments are willing to do it in a voluntary manner, make changes to FRBM legislation, wherein 40% of the budgeted expenditure should be spent only on capital expenditure. 40% of the budgeted expenditure should be spent only on capital expenditure. And it should be made mandatory for both central and state government to spend at least 6% of their GDPs on education and another 6% on health. 6% of their GDP on education and that 6% on health. On health. Right? And then adopt outcome budgets and make citizen charters mandatory, so that expenditure can be transformed into outcomes also. Adopt outcome budgets and make citizen charters mandatory. Citizen charters mandatory. Right? You have to provide all these solutions. The question again looks simple. Please remember, the best part of UPSC question paper is that, or even it is the worst part. The question looks very simple, and everyone who is writing the mains thinks that they can easily write answers to all these questions with their left hand. The problem is that they don't know how to write with left hand. Since they write with the right hand, they are left out also. So that is the reason why you have to be very careful. Right? Next, the doctrine of democratic governance makes it necessary that the public's perception of the integrity and commitment of civil servants becomes absolutely positive. Again, these kind of questions are so cute. You start liking them. You start liking them instantly. Right? The doctrine of democratic governance makes it necessary that the public perception of the integrity and commitment of civil servants becomes absolutely positive. So, what is this doctrine of democratic governance in the first place? There is nothing like that. There are all high sounding words which have absolutely no meaning at all. But we have to find some meaning for this term. Doctrine of democratic governance means a governance wherein citizens are at the center of developmental activities. A governance wherein citizens are at the center of developmental activities. That means this doctrine of democratic governance demands participation, transparency, accountability, rule of law, responsiveness on the part of bureaucracy. And who has to realize the objectives of this doctrine of democratic governance? Ultimately, the civil servants. Because civil servants are the ones who are given responsibility to implement the policies of the governments, both the central and state governments. And what is the perception of the people? The perception of the people is that civil servants lack integrity and they also lack commitment to public service. That is the perception of the people. Why do people have this kind of perception? Because we have continued with colonial structures and colonial attitudes of our bureaucracy. These colonial structures and colonial attitudes that mark the functioning, that characterize the functioning of our civil services, creates suspicions in the minds of the people regarding the commitment of civil servants. They create suspicion in the minds of people regarding the commitment of civil servants. And how to change this perception? The crux of your answer is how to change this perception. The crux. How to change this perception? By implementing civil services reforms. What are the reforms that you have to implement here? First, depoliticization of civil services, because it is said that they are committed only to the ruling political party in power but not to the people. Commitment. They are committed only to the ruling political party in power but not to the people. So we must depoliticize the functioning of civil servants. And how to ensure their integrity? We can ensure their integrity through transparency and accountability in the functioning of civil services. Transparency and accountability. Let right to information be implemented in both letter and spirit, so that it becomes impossible for them to indulge in any corruption, nepotism, favoritism. RTI should be implemented in both letter and spirit. In the last 10 years, our central government has borrowed 180 lakh crores of rupees. Do we know how the government has spent that money? We don't know. Wherever there is secrecy, there is always scope for corruption. Absence of integrity, financial integrity, results only in corruption. That is the reason why we have to ensure transparency. And another problem with our civil services is that there is no accountability of civil servants. In our parliamentary democracy, we talk about three important institutions: political executive, bureaucracy, and people. Bureaucracy is accountable to politicians, which has only resulted in politicization of civil services. Politicians are accountable to people only through electoral process, that too once in 5 years. But there is no accountability of bureaucracy towards citizens. There is no accountability of bureaucracy towards citizens. That is the reason why there is no integrity also, because integrity comes only with accountability. And we need accountability. How? Social audit of a performance of bureaucracy. Let the citizens evaluate the performance of bureaucracy. Let the citizens evaluate the performance of bureaucracy. Social audit of performance of bureaucracy. Social audit of performance of bureaucracy in terms of realizing the outcomes, so that we can have accountability also. Then what else should be done to ensure integrity? Let there be effective accountability mechanisms more in terms of removal of those civil servants who prove to be inefficient. As we studied, this articles 310 and 311 should be removed from the constitution, and any kind of safeguards for effective functioning of bureaucracy can be included in article 309. And those civil servants who are not efficient but must be removed from services after 20 years. All those things you have to write for this question. Again, the question looks very simple. The problem with these kind of generic questions is that answers have to be very specific. Right? we will come to this IR questions towards the end. Let us come to question 11. What are the aims and objectives of the recently passed and enforced Public Examination Prevention of Unfair Means Act 2024? Whether university, state education boards are also covered under this act. Again, these are the kind of questions sometimes UPSC will ask also. Again, very cute questions. You start liking them. So, what is the reason why this act was passed in the first place? What is the reason why this act was passed in the first place? Because, again, please remember, the question looks very simple. The answer has to be more comprehensive. Has to be more comprehensive. That is what important. You know, why this act was passed? What is the reason why the government has passed this act? There were many instances. You can mention all of them. From Bihar to Uttar Pradesh to Chhattisgarh to Maharashtra to Telangana to all other states. Whenever these states were holding any kind of a competitive examination to conduct for recruitment to their civil services or any other positions, we have seen leakage of question papers, including Rajasthan also. Not only this, we have seen leakage of question papers of other competitive examinations like UGC NEET and also undergraduate examinations and also PG examinations UG, right? And that is the reason why this act was passed in 2024. What is the objective of this act? Prevention of Unfair Means Act. Can it prevent the unfair means? It is mostly not prevention, it is only punishment. If anyone indulges in this kind of unfair means, unfair means here, they have proxies are writing the answers in the examination hall, and you are paying money to get the question papers. Someone is leaking the question papers, putting them on a dark web, and people are buying those question papers. This is what it is. And whether university, state board examinations are also covered under this act? Yes, all examinations are covered under this act also. That is the reason why UGC NET also is part of this. NEET examination, everything is covered under this act. Now the question is that whether this legislation can be effective or not. You have to focus more on analysis part. So, what is the analysis part that we are talking about here? First of all, what is the reason why these unfair means are used? Why unfair means are used? Why unfair means are used? Why? Because of competition. Too much of competition with too less number of vacancies. For example, take the case of something like NEET. In all government colleges, they have more than maximum around 50,000 seats are there, and at least more than 2 crore people will be writing the examination. In government colleges, your entire 4-year course will be completed in a few lakh rupees. On the other hand, if you are getting admission into private colleges, it will be at least minimum 4 crores, 5 crores. You will be spending capitation fee, NRI quota, whatever may be the name, they will ask you to pay a huge amount of money. On the other hand, if you give around 20 lakh rupees for a question paper, if you give 20 lakh rupees for a question paper, you will get admission. So, does this act prevent that kind of things? No. Question papers will be leaked, continue to be leaked, whether this act or not, because this act was passed in March, I think, if I am not wrong, in March or April this year, and this NEET examination was conducted in April or May, June or whatever may be the month. That means it has not prevented, right? So, what is the solution? As I said, the questions look very simple, but your answers have to be comprehensive. What is the solution? The solution definitely is about the legislations, but more importantly, You have to focus on more on why these kind of things are happening. First and foremost, the number of government jobs are getting reduced. Second, there will be more reservations also in the government jobs. So for people from other categories, it is very difficult for them to get into services. Even in the reserved category also it is very difficult because of the competition is very, very high. And that is the reason why people are resorting to these unfair means. For example, in case of UP, when they conducted examination for constables, for around 60,000 positions, almost 2.5 crore people have applied. And at the state level also, the state service commissions, public service commissions, they don't conduct examinations regularly. They conduct examinations once in 5 years or 10 years. Automatically, the question papers will be leaked because competition is very tough. For a country of 140 crore people, we should have at least minimum, at least one medical college per one district. There should be at least 800 medical colleges. We don't have so many of them. And that is the reason why NEET examination paper will be leaked, because private medical education can be very, very costly. So the root cause of the problem is not about leakage. The root cause of the problem is about the absence of education infrastructure. That is what you have to write for this answer. Right? The question looks very simple again. For these kind of questions, you have to go beyond the question. Right? Otherwise, after Nirbhaya legislation, we have seen, sexual exploitation of women being committed on a regular basis. Did Nirbhaya legislation reduce any kind of rapes against women? Never. And in Bengal, Bengal Assembly has passed a law saying that a rapist would be given capital punishment. Then what will he do? He will kill the victim also to prevent any kind of proof also. Legislations will not provide solutions. Go to the root cause of the problem and come out with the solutions. That is what you have to write for this question. Right? Next, right to privacy is intrinsic to right to life and personal liberty and is inherently protected under Article 21 of the Constitution. Explain in this reference, discuss the law relating to DNA testing of child in the womb to establish paternity. Again, this right to privacy has been asked by UPSC in your prelims for so many times. In the process has taken over the privacy of right to privacy. Almost every year they are asking the same question in prelims, right to privacy. Now UPSC is exploiting right to privacy in the main examination also. As if they don't have any questions to ask also. What nonsense UPSC is doing, we don't know here. When they have so much of a research team, why are you asking these kind of questions? Right? You'd never know. Right to privacy is intrinsic to life and personal liberty and is inherently protected under Article 21 of the Constitution. Explain. As usual, why? Why this right to privacy is inherently protected under Article 21 of the Constitution? Because of the changes that have taken place in our society. That is where your answer should be focusing on. What are the changes that have taken place in our society? With the spread of social media, privacy had become a major casualty. Anything can be written on social media about you. Anything related to your private life can be put on social media without your permission. This is one aspect of privacy. Second, these social media websites, they take your personal details and they will be selling your personal details to other marketing companies for a price. There are so many cases against Facebook in United States of America for these kind of crimes only. And then it becomes difficult, this character assassination can be very easy in this age of social media. Character assassination, can be very easy, because this lie can spread very easily, so fast, before people ever come to know about the truth also. By the time they come to know about the truth, the damage is already done. And then, this right to privacy had become more important when the government of India has made Aadhaar mandatory for every service provided by the government. For example, I am going to a medical store to buy medicines, Aadhaar is mandatory. I am buying a mobile SIM card. To buy mobile SIM card, Aadhaar is mandatory. I am going to visit a temple and there will be someone between me and God, that is Aadhaar. Unless I have Aadhaar, I will not be allowed into inside the temple also. Normally, it used to be said that there should not be any kind of distance between a God and devotee, but without Aadhaar, you don't have any Aadhaar also. Right? That is where the problem is. And that is the reason why in the Puttaswamy case, Supreme Court had clearly mentioned that right to privacy is an integral part of Article 21, right to life and personal liberty. And that is the reason why Supreme Court has said that Aadhaar cannot be made mandatory for everything. They said that Aadhaar can be made mandatory only for two things. One is, filing income tax returns. Second one is to get subsidies from the government. But in the second, the condition is also there. If you don't have Aadhaar, it does not mean that you will be denied those benefits also. That is what it is. And after that, through various judgments, Supreme Court has expanded the scope of right to privacy, especially in this social media, right, which is definitely necessary. And that is the reason why DPDP legislation was also passed. DPDP Act was, I think, was also asked in some other papers, another paper of GS, right. Digital Personal Data Protection Act was also passed to protect the privacy of individuals. You have to mention DPDP legislation also. August 2023, the legislation was passed by the Parliament, Digital Personal Data Protection Act. Right. Next, in this reference, discuss the law relating to DNA testing of a child in the womb to establish its paternity. So, again, the problem here is that we are living in a society wherein relationships have become very common. Marriage as an institution is losing its sanctity because of what you call the developments in our society, westernization of our societies. So the question here is that still we have a Hindu Marriage Act is there, Succession Act is there. So normally what happens, the property of the parents should always belong to the children under the Succession Act. But who are the children? Biological children. For that you will be conducting the DNA test. Why it has been asked? Because again, there was a former Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh, and his son, he had a son from a relationship. That is when it had become controversial. Why? Because the former Chief Minister, he said that he has said no to DNA test. But finally, he was forced to take the DNA test and proved that that his son was his legitimate son only. Then the government had passed this DNA Act, wherein this Act permits to take this DNA test even in the womb of the mother also, to know about the parents. That is what you have to write here. Again, these kind of questions, you need a lot of examples. You have to quote this former Chief Minister who has refused DNA test, finally was forced to take. Again, this requires knowledge of current events. Current events does not only mean current events, it can include past affairs also. Past affairs of leaders also. Right. Next, what changes has the Union government recently introduced in the domain of center-state relations? Suggest measures to be adopted to build the trust between the center and states for strengthening federalism. Again, you like these kind of cute, innocent questions, right? you start liking UPSC unconditionally for these kind of such a cute and innocent questions, right? You are expressing your unconditional love for UPSC. Again, the problem is that when these kind of questions are asked, how can you make your answers different from others? Because when the questions are easy, problem comes for you. Why? Everyone will write the answer. Then how will you get out of 15 marks, 9 marks? That is what you have to see. Let us see. What changes have the Union government recently introduced in the domain of center-state relations? How do you start your answer? Our constitutional makers have envisaged a strong central government with much weaker states. That is how you start your answer with. That is the reason why Indian Constitution is rightly described as federal in form but unitary in spirit. Over a period of time, the states started demanding more powers due to political, administrative, economic and other reasons. And with the emergence of coalition governments, we have moved towards a cooperative federalism also. Come to the question, what changes have the Union governments recently introduced in the domain of Union-state relations? In the last 10 years, what are the changes? First, implementation of 14th Finance Commission recommendations. You have to be very specific. Implementation of 14th Finance Commission recommendations. 14th Finance Commission recommendations. And what do we say here? As part of this implementation of 14th Finance Commission recommendations, you are talking about, vertical transfers have increased from 32% to 42%. Vertical transfer, have increased from 32% to 42%. Have increased from 32% to 42%. Second change. Planning Commission was replaced with Niti Aayog. It was replaced with Niti Aayog. It was replaced with Niti Aayog to promote cooperative federalism. Third, GST, implementation of GST. Wherein the Union government has agreed to provide compensation to the states for a period of 5 years for any loss of revenue. And the GST council decisions normally are taken unanimously. This is the third change that the government has introduced in Union-state relations. Then what did the next change? The next change that the government has introduced in Union-state relations is these finance commission transfers are completely unconditional. State governments are given more freedom to spend their finances, unlike planning commission. Next, Union government also has allowed the state governments to retain taxation powers on liquor and petrol and other products. Right? This is what they have done. Suggest measures to be adopted to build the trust between the center and states. There you can write whatever you want. M.M. Bunchi Commission recommendations. First one is regarding the appointment of governors. Governor should be appointed in consultation with the chief minister. The central government can send a list of 3 names and appoint a person who is mostly non-political. Second, preventing the misuse of Article 356. Third, defining the discretionary powers of governor in terms of giving assent to the bills passed by the state legislative assemblies. Right? This is regarding center-state administrative relations. Next, central government should not resort to making legislation for subjects in the state list. And then what are the other suggestions that you can give here? What are the other suggestions that you can give here to promote better center-state relations? GST Council mechanism, wherein any decision to be implemented in case of conflict, it requires 75% voting, which provides veto powers to the union government. It should be changed. Then vertical devolution should be increased to 50%. At present, it is 42%, 41%. It should be increased to 50% because states are performing more functions. Next, more powers should be given to the state governments in the true spirit of cooperative federalism. You can write all those solutions, and your answers have to be very, very specific also. Right? Right. So that is what you have to write here. Explain the reasons for the growth of PIL in India. As a result of it, has the Indian Supreme Court emerged as the world's most powerful judiciary? The first part of the question says that why PIL has increased in India. Second, because of PIL, did our Supreme Court become the most powerful judiciary? So, why PIL had come into existence in the first place? This is what you remember what we have studied also. By 1980s, there was what is called the failure of both legislature and executive in fulfilling the demands of the people. By 1980s, people were completely rejected with Congress party, and they brought Janata Party power in 1977. But Janata Party was united in opposing the Congress, but not in ruling the country, and they had no option but to bring Congress party back to power. It does not mean that they are happy. They don't have any alternative. Tina factor. The failure of legislature and executive created what is called political vacuum in the country. This is what you have to exactly write words also. Political vacuum. Vacuum means empty space in the country. And this political vacuum was filled in by judiciary. And the judiciary has used the instrument called PIL to indulge in judicial activism. PIL. And what are the other reasons why PIL has come into existence? The functioning of judiciary itself is also not above the mark. Functioning of judiciary itself is also not satisfactory. Why? Our judiciary suffered from two important weaknesses. One, locus standi. That means if your fundamental rights are violated, you can approach judiciary by filing different writ petitions. Only you can file writ petition. Habeas corpus, mandamus, anything else. An agricultural laborer who is being forced to work in an land by the landlord for 18 hours a day without being paid minimum wages, he can go to Supreme Court because right against exploitation is also part of your fundamental rights. That is what he can approach Supreme Court or High Courts, Article 32 or 226. But in reality, can he do it? Can he do it? That is where judiciary has been a failure. Second, judicial process is very lengthy. We are going to the court. Ask any lawyer, when will the judgment come? I remember, I think there was this film in Munabhai, I think. There was a very beautiful dialogue. This heroine's house is occupied, and the lawyers say that let us file cases in the court. And then Sanjay Dutt will ask them, when can we expect the judgment? They say that very soon, 5 months, 6 months, 1 year, 10 years. It will never come. It will never come. And if you have money, you can keep on filing review petitions. Review petitions. Right? So, third problem with judiciary is costly. Costly. It is very costly. How to overcome all these things? That is why, Justice P.N. Bhagavati, along with Justice V.R. Krishnaiah, P.N. Bhagavati had a very mixed tenure. He was one of those judges who had written that infamous judgment in fundamental rights in 1976 in ADM Jabalpur case. He had become notorious for that judgment. And the same justice wanted to atone his mistakes, and he had come out with this innovation along with Justice V.R. Krishnaiah, PIL, wherein they have removed the most important part, locus standi. In 1980s, PILs focused on individual political freedoms. 1990s, economic, social, cultural, environmental issues. 2000s, accountability of the state. Beyond that, constitutional issues. Everything is about PIL only. The question here, you can give a lot, in our class also I had given so many case studies also, you can go through all of them. And has the Supreme Court emerged as the world's most powerful judiciary? Definitely, it has emerged. PIL is only one of the instruments. Why? Because before PIL itself, Supreme Court has emerged very powerful. When Supreme Court had introduced the concept of due process of law in Menaka Gandhi versus Union of India case in 1978. It had become, the moment it had introduced the concept of due process of law, it had become very powerful, because with the concept of due process of law, anything can be under the purview of judiciary. For example, recently, Supreme Court had taken up on a suo motu basis this Calcutta rape incident. It is not because PIL, Supreme Court had taken up on a suo motu basis also. Definitely it had become very powerful, and that is where you have to provide the solutions, because any institution which has so much of power without accountability can result in dictatorship. That is the reason why there are so many weaknesses in the functioning of judiciary also, and then provide the solutions. There should be transparency in appointment of judges. There should be time limit fixed for judges to complete the investigations into cases and come out with the judgments. And there should be clear cut objective performance evaluation of the judges by the stakeholders, what is called social audit. Everything you have to write as part of solutions towards the end. Answers have to be very comprehensive. Right? Discuss India as a secular state and compare with the secular principles of the United States Constitution. Discuss India as a secular state and compare with the secular principles of US Constitution. First and foremost, if you look at India, this secularism is part of fundamental rights. Articles 25 to 28. We are looking at the constitutional scheme of things. In the United States of America, this secularism was added through First Amendment to the Constitution. It was not part of their original Constitution. It was added through First Amendment to the Constitution. Second, in India, the word secularism was added later in the preamble as part of 42nd Amendment. As part of 42nd Amendment. 42nd Amendment. Right? And what is the difference between India and the United States? Western countries only. Basically, the difference is that in Western countries, this concept of secularism has emerged as a reaction to the dominance by the Christian Catholic Church. That is the reason why in secularism in Western countries is a mostly negative concept. It is a negative concept, because it has come as a negation to the dominance of the Catholic Church. Whereas in India, secularism is a positive concept. It is more a positive concept, wherein the state would recognize all religions and would also treat all religions equally, and the state will not discriminate people on the basis of their religious beliefs. In the Western countries, the state need not recognize. That is the reason why If you look at United States of America, after September 11, people belonging to one community have been targeted and they have been, routinely penalized. There was this film also, Shah Rukh Khan film. My name is Khan and I am not a terrorist. And what happened, ironically, he went to United States of America for the premiere of the film. And he was stopped in the airport, New York, because his name is Khan. And they said that you are a terrorist. So, you can see here, people belonging to one particular religion are discriminated because their concept of secularism is not a positive concept. Even though they call themselves a secular state, the state can easily discriminate against one section of society, one religion, on the basis of one section of society on the basis of their religious beliefs. In India, we don't have that kind of thing. Even our former President Abdul Kalam was strip searched in the airport there because he has a Muslim name. So that is the reason why in Western countries they face so many problems related to how to tackle the terrorism, especially religious terrorism. Because in the name of tackling religious terrorism, they are only promoting more of a religious fundamentalism, which can be leading into terrorism also. This is what you have to write as part of your answers. Whereas in India, since our concept of secularism is more positive, it is more constructive, the state will not be discriminating the people on the basis of their religious beliefs. On top of it, another thing that is discriminates between India and America in terms of secularism is that in our secularism, we have given more rights to minority communities. They can establish their educational institutions, they can establish their charitable trusts, they can buy assets, movable and immovable properties, they can run their businesses without any state interference. Similarly, they can run their religious institutions without any state interference. On the other hand, the government of India can easily confiscate religious temples belonging to Hindu religion, even if it is private temples. But the same thing cannot be done by the government when it comes to minority religions. These kind of things are not there in United States of America. This question requires more what you call analytical answers. Next, Citizen Charter has been a landmark initiative in ensuring citizen-centric administration, but is yet to reach full potential. Identify factors hindering the realization of its promise and suggest measures to overcome them. Last year, the same question was asked in our public administration paper 1 for 20 marks. If you have written last year mains and all this year mains, you can easily write. Please refer to my answer. Last year, public administration question 4, paper page 6, and give me marks also. God bless you, UPSC. Right? That is what, they are repeating the questions, simple. So, this is a very straightforward question. What are the reasons why citizen charters have been a failure? Straightforward. First and foremost, the term citizen charter had become a misnomer. Citizen charters are formulated by bureaucracy on their own without involving citizens. They are nothing but bureaucratic charters. Second, the promises made in citizen charters are in mostly qualitative terms. As second RC mentions, citizen charters are nothing like a pious statements of noble intentions without having any practical significance. When railways say that they will ensure safe and comfortable travel, what does it mean? Safety means they will not, they can ensure that there will not be more than 200 accidents per year, and there will not be more than 1,000 people who will be dying in those accidents. Safety. Comfort. Comfort means you are taking a train, and in the train, on your berth only 100 people are sitting. You can sit as one person along with 100 people also. Comfort. When you are not defining the standards in quantifiable terms, citizen charters have no meaning. And citizens are never involved in formulating the charters. Next, even if the bureaucracy does not fulfill the promises made in the citizen charters, there is no accountability. And even if you don't get any kind of services mentioned in the citizen charters, there are no grievance redressal mechanisms. Bureaucracy which is supposed to implement the citizen charter suffers from colonial attitudes. They treat the people as subjects, servants, not as masters. And there is lack of awareness among the people about citizen charters. How many of you know that the citizen charters are there? How many of you know that UPSC also has a citizen charter? How many of you have seen UPSC citizen charter? Have you seen UPSC citizen charter? You know the reason why they are a failure. And UPSC have the guts to ask questions also. Because in their own citizen charters, they never mention the services to be provided them in quantifiable terms. Why should it take UPSC, to conduct this examination for 18 long months? In 18 months, we can have 3 elections to Lok Sabha also. Why can't you complete the entire process in 6 months? Prelims, mains and interview complete in 6 months. American president is also elected only with 2 months duration. Right? So, there is a saying in the Bible, before reforming others, reform thyself. Reform yourself before reforming others. Let us hope that UPSC also will do the same thing. And you can see here, the entire personality test. This lady who had successfully, cheated UPSC, had got 190 marks in interview also. 140 marks in ethics also. Right? Right. Then UPSC have the guts to ask these kind of questions also. Next, let us go to the next question. In a crucial domain like the public healthcare system, the Indian state should play a vital role to contain the adverse impact of marketization of the system. Suggest some measures through which the state can enhance the reach of public healthcare at the grassroots level. As usual, why Indian state has to play a very important role in public healthcare system? Why? If you look at it, between 1940s and 1990s, in capital expenditure by the government was mostly in physical capital. 1950s and 60s it was mostly in irrigation. 1970s and 80s it was mostly in public sector enterprise. 2 critical areas were neglected by the governments during the planning period. 1, education, 2, health. That is the reason why we have not been able to transform our demographic bulge into demographic dividend. Both central and state governments have completely neglected education and health. After 1991, we have opted for a neoliberal state, NPM state we call it as, neoliberal state. As part of neoliberal state, what did we do? We have, delegated these functions, critical functions like education and health, to the private sector. And what happened? As we study, private sector will provide services only to those people who have the necessary purchasing power. So, poorest sections of society simply did not have access to quality education or quality health also. And private sector, you can see all the top corporate hospitals only in the metropolitan cities. Have you ever seen any private sector opening hospitals in rural areas, villages? No. Why? Because people cannot pay for those services. It led to widening inequalities between rich people and poor people, between people in urban areas and people in rural areas. So what happened? Since the government is not spending enough on public healthcare systems, even in rural areas also, people, poor people are forced to opt for private healthcare. And on top of it, in the private healthcare, there will be so many quacks also, munabhais, right? Those who are not, eligible are also opening hospitals, and they are performing surgeries also. Recently, you must have seen in a case in Bihar, wherein a fake doctor was conducting a surgery by watching YouTube videos. You must have seen those things, right? You must have. And of course, the patient died also. See, what is the difference? What is the difference between the communist regimes and India? India also opted for the same kind of socialist policies between 1940s and 1990s. What did those communist regimes have done? They have focused on two things, education and health. Completely provided free of cost, both education and health. Whereas in India, we have not done it. So what is happening here? People are made to suffer in terms of the low quality of services provided by private health care at exorbitant prices. The best example was during the corona crisis. The government has said that the corona pill, whatever it is, it will not be costing more than 1200 rupees. During the second wave of corona, people forget all these things. Those injections were sold for even 5 lakh rupees, 10 lakh rupees also. On top of it, after doing all the things, people die also. And the private corporate hospitals would not let you to take the body unless and until you pay the entire amount also. Why? Because we have not at all focused on public health care. What should be done? As I mentioned, first and foremost, since neither the central nor the state governments nor local self governments are spending money in a voluntary manner, we must bring out a legislation, something like FRBM, wherein we say that they should be spending at least 6% of their state GDP, central GDP, only exclusively on health sector. It should be made mandatory. Right now, combined together, we are spending around 1.8% of our GDP on health sector. Even a country like Sri Lanka, which is suffering a serious crisis, is spending more than 3%. Pakistan spends more. Bangladesh always spends more. And where is the question of India talking about Vikasit Bharat? You can have Vikasit Bharat only when you have Vikasit Bharatiya, Indians. So when you don't have a healthy India, where is the question of Vikasit Bharat? So that is the reason why it should be made mandatory for the government, both central and state governments, even the local governments also, to spend at least 6% of their respective GDPs only on health sector. Please remember here, outlay does not mean outcome. Expenditure does not mean outcomes. So what should be done? First, primary health care center in the village should be the basic unit of health administration. And these primary health care centers should be run through what is called the public private people panchayat partnership mode, 5P. Public private people panchayat partnership. That means it is the private sector that will be running the primary health care centers. It is the government that will be giving money to them. It is the people and the panchayat who will be evaluating their performance through social audits, so that outlays are converted into outcomes. Second, digitalization of health records. We need a digitalization of health records so that telemedicine and other things can be successful also. Digitalization of our health records. It's a mammoth, gigantic task, but it should be done. National Health Mission, I think Digital Health Mission is there. That is also one of the solutions. Next, solution we are providing here is that for other serious health problems, right now at the state level as well as the central level, we have a Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, Ayushman Bharat, wherein health insurance is provided. But the problem is that this is what we study in mathematics also. The shortest distance between any 2 points is straight line. This is what we study in mathematics. Shortest distance between 2 points is only a straight line, right? What do we mean by that? Why these schemes like Ayushman Bharat can never be successful? Why they can never be successful? This is what we say. 2 points, shortest distance is always a straight line. It cannot be like this, it cannot be like this, it cannot be like this, or it cannot be like this, anything. Here people, and this is the government. And through Ayushman Bharat, what you are doing? you are bringing in intermediaries called hospitals. That means people will go to these corporate hospitals, and these corporate hospitals are funded by government through insurance, right? This is where the problem is. So that is the reason why what the government should be ideally doing is focusing on health infrastructure, developing health infrastructure rather than privatizing the healthcare systems. That is the reason why in America also this Obamacare is becoming a controversial political issue. If you happen to read or listen to the debates also, Obamacare, right? Because in America, health expenses are the costliest in the world. That is the reason why Indian doctors always go to America to improve their financial health, right? And that is what it is. In India also, unfortunately, we are moving towards that only. As part of this, the Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, 5 lakh rupees of health care is provided. So what these corporates will be doing, even if it is not required surgery, they will conduct a surgery to claim. You will go to the hospital with simple cold and a slight fever. They will say that it is better you go for bypass surgery because the government will give you money. And the government says that the scheme is extremely successful. So many people had heart surgeries. But the problem is that there is no change of heart, right? That is where the problem is. That is the reason why the focus should be on improving health infrastructure, which has been completely neglected by the state. That is the reason why when I say 6% of health expenditure, it should be spent on at the lowest level primary healthcare centers, above that community healthcare centers, above the district healthcare centers, and citizen charters should be made for all those healthcare centers regarding the availability of the doctors, availability of other healthcare professionals, availability of medicines, availability of equipment, so that outlays can be transformed into outcomes. Health insurance can be secondary, and more importantly, preventive health care should be given more importance. It is said that if we can provide safe drinking water to every citizen in our country, we can prevent at least 90% of the diseases. Not 1 or 2, 90. This is what, according to Government of India statistics only, I am not giving my own statistics. If we can provide safe drinking water, we have to focus on preventive aspects rather than curative aspects of health care. Preventive aspects. You have to write all these things, right? Next, e-governance is not just about the routine application of digital technology in service delivery process. It is as much about multifarious interactions for ensuring transparency and accountability. In the context, evaluate the role of interactive service model of e-governance. So, you can start your answer with why e-governance had come into existence in the first place. It had come into existence because of the failure of traditional bureaucratic models, which only resulted in red tapeism, unaccountability, goal displacement, lack of participation, secrecy, so on and so forth. So, e-governance had come into existence to improve the quality of service delivery mechanisms using information and communication technologies. But in India, e-governance has not been successful because we have only implemented what is called e-government, but not e-governance. That means we have only replaced what we call manual work with the help of computers. Beyond that, we have not done anything. Manual work with the help of computers. Beyond that, we have not done anything. Because e-governance must ensure transparency, it must ensure accountability, it must ensure participation, it must ensure responsiveness, it must ensure equity. All of them should be the objectives of e-governance. How can this be done? As I said, there are different models in e-governance: B2B, B2C, G2G, B2G, like this. As part of C2G, citizen to governance, or governance to citizen, government to citizen, we have this interactive service model, wherein there will be continuous interaction between the government and the citizens. How? All the services provided by the government are put up in the website of the government, and government people can sit in front of their laptops and fill in the application forms to reduce red tapeism, to reduce corruption. Why? Because corruption can be there only when there is personal interaction between the people, and they can also track their application status also, and they can also ensure accountability also. For example, EFIRs, part of interaction service, Pragati system, that the government has introduced, CP grams, centralized processing, grievance, administrative redressal administrative mechanisms, Pragati, proactive governance and timely implementation. All of them are part of e-governance to ensure transparency and accountability through interactive, what is called interactive service model. But unfortunately, most of them have been there only on paper but not in reality. To make e-governance successful, we have to implement other reforms also. We must ensure effective implementation of RTA, section 4 of RTA, wherein all the information is there on the websites on a real-time basis. We must also make sure that we have proper grievance redressal mechanisms, like in case of Syrian charters, through e-governance. And the government is taking the opinion of the people, participation, but that opinion is never included in the final legislation. For example, when the government announced this environmental policy in 2017-2018, it has received, the Ministry of Environment and Forest has received 50,000 suggestions, but not even a single suggestion was included in the final policy document. Participation does not mean inviting the suggestions, it also means including the suggestions. That requires changes in the attitudes of bureaucracy. We must transform the colonial attitudes of our bureaucracy into democratic values. All the things you have to write as part of your answer here. So this is what about all these questions. As you can see here, question paper is neither easy nor difficult. When the questions are easy, it becomes difficult for you. Why? Everyone will be writing the same answer. You have to write different answers, qualitatively different. That becomes difficult. When the questions are difficult, then also it is difficult for you. Why? We don't know what is the answer. That is the reason why average score in this paper is very less. Right? And look at this IR questions. As I said, IR is overrated and underperforming area all the time. Every year, as I said, they are asking 4 questions from IR. One question is about India and neighbors, one question about international institutions, and one question about there's United Nations and its institutions. So every year 4 standard questions are always there every year. You can easily predict the questions also because all of them are current events questions only. This year it's mostly analytical questions. Look at it. The West is fostering India as an alternative to reduce dependence on China's supply chain and as also strategically to counter China's political and economic dominance. Explain the statement with examples. Explain the statement with examples. Basically, UPSC is also becoming a cheerleader for the government. It is also becoming a cheerleader for the government. That is the reason why these kind of questions are asked repeatedly. These kind of questions are asked repeatedly. Right? So, what is the question? What does the question says? It says that West is looking at India as an alternative to reduce dependence on China's supply chain. Right? Why? Why? Because Corona crisis has brought into focus this hopeless dependence of the rest of the world over China for everything. If you remember, when I have done this economic survey also, I remember I have spent at least 15-20 minutes only on Chinese conundrum. Right? Economic survey is the most important document. Tomorrow when I discuss this economic questions also, you can see all the questions can directly be asked from economic survey only. And people read hundreds of books, thousands of pages. And that is the reason why every year they keep on writing the mains. So coming back here, what this has proved, Corona crisis, is that China has become the most important country in the world, because it could block all the supply chains. That is when it had what is called a complete monopoly over all raw material, and that had created so much of problem for the rest of the world. On top of it, China is using its natural wealth to dominate the world also through its initiatives also. This constructing this highway from China to the Europe directly, Belt and Road Initiative. In the process, it is also, and also it's a policy of a string of pearls, basically encircling the whole of Indian nation. That is the reason why West, apart from that, it's a military prowess also. China has more foreign exchange reserves than IMF and World Bank combined together. It is using its economic might, military dominance, and natural wealth, natural resources to dominate the rest of the world. That is the reason why the other day when you see the Quad meeting also, the Quad meeting, they said that we are not China centric, but all the discussions were only revolving around China only. If it might not be center, it may be in the form of rectangle or a triangle or anything, right? At the end of the day, it was only discussing China only. And the question says that West is fostering India as an alternative to reduce. Yes, definitely after Corona crisis, West started fostering India. Why? Because that is the reason why if you happen to see, recently our Prime Minister also has signed a landmark agreement with the United States of America, chipbuilding industries also, because China has dominated, monopolized that particular sector also. You take anything, 5G technologies, artificial intelligence, robotics, and apart from this, all these natural resources, everything comes only from China. It has expanded its frontiers so much that even America is forced, and it will not be long before Chinese per capita, Chinese economy can become much bigger than America's economy also. Already China's GDP is around $19 trillion, and America's GDP is $25 trillion. So it will not be long before China's GDP will be overtaking America also. On top of it, China also has a huge amount of advantage. Its population, America's population is only 35 crores. China's population is 140 crores. China also has advantage in terms of natural resources, as the economic survey clearly pointed out. So that is where West is promoting India as a counter to China. But is India able to benefit out of it? We are trying our level best, but there are so many problems also, because Make in India campaign has come as some kind of hurdle, because we want others to come and produce in our country only. So that is the reason why economic surveys suggested from Make in India to Assemble in India. That is where Apple and others are assembling them in India. And India is also, another problem here is that India is not willing to become part of global economic unions. For example, RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Treaty. India is becoming a little bit more conservative. That is also a major challenge. And another thing here is that this Quad alliance also, this is more of a military alliance rather than economic partnership. More of a military alliance rather than economic partnership. But India is shy of saying that it is a military alliance, but that is what it is. We have to convert into more stronger economic partnership. But again, there is so much of problem between India and America only regarding the tariffs. These economic unions are becoming difficult. Trade unions, customs unions are becoming difficult also. You have to write all of them. And after writing these things, in spite of all these things, India has the potential to replace China with its liberal economic policies, and also with better cooperation between the West and India through various alliances, Quad, India and European Union, like this. You have to write all those things. Next, critically analyze India is evolving diplomatic, economic and strategic relations with strategic relationship with Central Asian republics, highlighting their increasing significance in regional and these global geopolitics, how they are becoming important. That is what the question says. Diplomatic, economic and strategic relations with Central Asian republics. So, when we say Central Asian republics, what are the countries you are talking about? When we talk about Central Asian republics, what are the countries you are talking about? Central Asian republics. From Iran to all the countries towards the west of Iran, right? Those countries which are neighboring Russia, China and this Central Asia. Why it has become very important? Why it has become very important? From a global geopolitics point of view. Why? Because Pakistan is there on one side, Russia is there on the other side, China is there on this side. And what we are witnessing is this nexus between Russia, Pakistan and China as a counter to India, America and other Western countries' alliances. That is why these Central Asian republics had become very important from global geopolitics point of view. Why? Because most of the Central Asian republics, in terms of their geography, they have huge amount of natural resources. And China is already penetrating into the Central Asian republics through this Belt and Road Initiative. And China is constructing so many ports also to gain monopoly over the sea trade also. And most of these Central Asian republics are poor. Obviously, China is offering them huge amount of financial assistance, mostly in the form of loans. Why Sri Lanka had become bankrupt? Because it had taken huge amount of loans. And that is what China is also doing. And as I said, these Central Asian republics, religion is also very important. Most of them are Muslim dominated countries. That also becomes important from India's perspective, because we should prevent them from coming to any kind of assistance to Pakistan in promoting terrorism. And in terms of economic, India is already looking at the Central Asian republics as a way to mostly export its products to Europe also. That is the reason why in this Iran, this port is what is called Jawahar Writing Port, right? That is where India is also investing there, showing a lot of interest also. They are important from military, defense, geopolitics, global geopolitics, because you need a counterweight to this Russia, Pakistan, China alliance. Because now you can see Russia is moving more closer to China, as India is moving closer to America. Why? Because China is the only country that has openly supported Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Right? India spoke about equiditions. Obviously, it is not liked by either Russia or Ukraine. So, under this, we need to be cultivating more regional alliances to prevent the domination of these three countries. Some of the Central Asian republics are in favor of in favor of America also, because especially this Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan and Turkmenistan, most of these are basically previous part of the previous Soviet Union. And what they have seen, what Soviet Union has done to Ukraine, former USSR, part of former USSR. You have to mention all these things, right? Next, terrorism has become a significant threat to global peace and security. Evaluate the effectiveness of United Nations Security Council's Counter-Terrorism Committee and its associated bodies in addressing and mitigating this threat at the international level. So, if you look at it, why United Nations Counter-Terrorism Body and Security Council have not been as successful as they should have been. Why they have not been as successful as they should have been? This Counter-Terrorism Committee, it had come into existence in after terror attacks on America post 9/11. That is where you know whether it is effective or not. It had its origins in a terror attack on America, September 11, 2001. So basically, this counter-terrorism committee had come into existence basically to address terror-related issues of America and Western countries. And what is the problem here? The problem here is that one country's terrorist is another country's freedom fighter. There is no consensus. There is no consensus. And then another problem is that it does not have any enforcement capabilities. That means the member countries do not adhere to its rulings or conditions. It has no powers to oversee the implementation of its own orders also, because that is the problem with all the United Nations organizations. For example, when Russia went to war with Ukraine, Security Council and everyone has voted against Russia in terms of by imposing sanctions also. There are so many countries which have not followed their sanctions, including India. What can they do? Nothing. And another problem is that the definition of a terrorist itself becomes difficult. What is the definition of a terrorist? And the problem here is that America itself supports mostly these dictatorial and terrorist countries for its own strategic interests. We have to mention all of them. Right? Discuss the geopolitical and geostrategic importance of Maldives for India with a focus on global trade and energy flows. Further, also discuss how this relationship affects India's maritime security and regional stability and amidst international competition. The question itself is 250 words, and you write that yes, it is very significant, and repeat the question, the answer is over. Right? This Maldives, it has been there in the news for a long period of time. Right? I think it's a straightforward question. You can write, you can draw whatever the maps you want also. Those are good in drawing maps. You can write on all these kind of mostly irrelevant questions. You can write answers. I think this is a very straightforward question. So this is about this GS paper 2, and tomorrow let me take up this ethics paper, GS paper 4, and after tomorrow let me take up GS paper 3. And in paper 1, this society and social issues also I will be doing it. History, what is there to study also? Who will study history? Who don't have any future? So we will not do history, because if you study history, there is every possibility of you becoming part of history also. I want to have a bright future also. Right? Tomorrow at the same time, 11 o'clock, we will do GS paper 3. Tomorrow we will do it.